Hello, we are in section 19.1, and this is about compound interest and future value. So here's some terminology that we need to know. Time value of money, that's the TVM keys that I've referred to, the value of money given interest earned over a given period of time. So the interest compounds and it adds to the principal, and that's kind of the whole point of the compounding interest. Compounding, collecting the interest periodically over the life of the loan and adding it to the principal. And this can happen once a year, twice a year, quarterly, 12 times per year. So it can happen a number of times. Compound interest is the interest on the principal plus the interest of prior periods. Future value is the amount of the loan or investment at the end of the last period, also called compound amount. And then present value, how much money, how much money will have been deposited today or at some date to reach a specific amount of maturity. So present value is what's happening today, future value is down the road, and we will be using that terminology a lot. So compounding goes from present value to future value. This is a picture of if you have a present value of $1, then each time you add some interest, right? So then you compound the interest and you have $1.08. And then after 2 periods, you compound the interest again and you have $1.17. 3 periods, more interest is added. And then at the end of the 4th period, you have $1.36. So in 4 periods on this, you've earned 36 cents. Now, this is just $1, so obviously it's not going to be very much. This is a chart of our common compounding periods per year. So if it's compounded annually, that means once a year, semi-annually 2 times per year, quarterlies 4 times, monthlies 12 times, and weekly and daily we don't really do much with, but it is possible to be compounded weekly or daily. And that means interest is compounded and added into the account. The number of periods, that means, so that's basically how many times the interest compounds. And so if you have one that compounds, like this one says, if you compound $1 for 4 years, 8% annually, semi-annually or quarterly, this is how many periods you would have. So if your annual if you're compounding annually, you would compound 4 times because it's 4 periods, semi-annual, twice a year, so 8 periods, and then quarterly would be 16. To find the rate that we're going to use per period, you divide. So you multiply to find out how many periods, you take your interest and divide by how many times it's compounded in a year's time. So if it's annually, you divide by 1, semi-annual 2, quarterly 4, and that's the amount that we're going to put on our financial calculator for so when we're compounding interest, or manually, because we are going to do some of that. So this is simple versus compound interest. If we calculate simple interest, then we're just going to take it times 4 years. It's an annual interest rate of 8%. This is a problem about bills depositing $80 for 4 years. Interest rate's 8%. If we just use simple interest, then we're going to take the principal $80 times the rate of 8% times 4 years. Maturity value then would be 80 plus 2560 because that's how much interest we earned. And we're just using the simple interest formula, I equals PRT. Now this is compounding interest in the same type of account, except now we're not using simple interest for the whole thing. We're using it for each time it compounds. So Bill deposited the $80 for 4 years. The interest rate is 8%. Now on this one, we're compounding each year. So in year 1, if you look at these calculations, right, 80 times 0.08 and then we get $6.40 of interest. So at the beginning of the next year, we're going to calculate on 86.40 because we add that interest in, and then we go ahead and we multiply to get our interest based on our new principal, because now that interest was added and that's our principal balance. At the end of this year, at that year, we add 691, so now we're at 93.31 for the next year. And then 746 is the amount of interest. When we add that, we get 177. And then at the end of the year, we have accumulated, or we've made it up to 108.83, and that's a total interest of 28.83. So for the compounding, it changes a little bit based on the fact that we're adding it in more often. Now, if we go back to the previous question, for simple interest, it was 25.60. With compound interest, it's 28.83. Now, this is a real small amount, so it's not making a big difference, but you can imagine the higher amount that you have, the more difference that would make for us to use the compounding way. This purple box tells us that we're going, how we do this, right? We calculate the simple interest, add it to the principal, and then we use the new amount to figure the next year's interest. And we do that for however many periods we need to for that problem. Now we are going to use our calculator mostly, right? But we're going to calculate this, at least once by the long method, and you'll see that coming up. All right, now notice we will not use the compound interest formula. There's a big old formula that we're not going to use, so you can ignore that. That's situation 3 in your textbook. You'll be happy when you see the formula that we're not doing that. Okay, so for calculating compound interest on our calculators, then we're going to use our TVM keys, and they'll give us part of the variables, and then we will just put those in and compute the one that we need to. Don't forget to clear your TVM keys from time to time. Second, clear TVM, that is right above the future value key. And we've used our financial calculators before, so I think you're somewhat interested in, or you have some knowledge about that, right? Enter the variables into the calculator in any order. It doesn't matter which category you put them in first, you just have to get them all in there. Money paid is always entered as a negative number by using the plus minus. So if you're paying in $300, you're going to put a negative. Money received is always entered as a positive number. Enter the interest rate as a periodic rate. You don't put in a percent. It is a percent, but we don't need a percent on our calculator. It knows that. And so we're going to put that in. Periodic rate means what amount of interest for this period. So, if it's a quarterly interest rate, we would take our annual percentage and divide it by 4, and that's what we would put in. Keep in mind there may be rounding differences when calculating the answer using different methods. So you might see an answer in your book that's not quite the same as yours because you use the calculator, they use the formula, that kind of thing. The second key allows you to access the function above each key. These functions are shown in brackets, such as format. We've used format. Remember, we want to set our calculators on 9 decimals. So if you should ever reset it, then you would need to go back to that. Number 8, make certain the number of decimals places that are shown are 9, right? So that's what I was just talking about. You want to put that on 9. It actually is good to reset your calculator from time to time. They have a tendency to get kind of jumbled up. Now I put this thing on here, set up for interest rate per period. I put this on here just in case. If you're having answers not coming out right, you might check this part, the second PY. I've never known this to be a problem in all these years that I've been using this calculator. Okay, so calculating compound amount using a financial calculator. I'm going to show you, we have an example here and you can try it yourself. And so it says to solve for the future value of $1 at 8% compounded annually for 4 years using your calculator, follow these steps. Remember, we just did this. I showed you this on a previous slide. It was $1.36. Your calculator will tell you that. So it's 4 periods because it's annual interest for 4 years. Your interest rate is 8%. And then the amount we're investing for present value is $1. We're putting it in an account, so we're going to use a negative. There's no payment, and then we compute future value, and you see that you get $1.36. And certainly you can just pause this and put these numbers on your calculator and try it. Okay, and then here's another one. Compound interest is calculated using the following formula. Calculating compound interest, you take your future value minus your present value, and that tells you how much interest you've earned. So if you put, this is just another one for your financial calculator. On this one, that it would be 4 periods. The interest rate is 8%. The amount invested is $80, right? We put it in as a negative. Future values 108.84, and so this just tells us the amount of interest. If we take future value and we subtract the present value, that tells us the amount of compound interest, or just the amount of interest that was earned, right? We earned $28.84 in interest. So now we're going to do that one I told you about that's manual. The only reason I really do this is I just want you to at least have experienced this and see how compound interest works if you're working it out yourself. Okay, so it's 2 years semi-annually, so that's 2 years times 2, right? Because this is 2 times per year. Right, so it's going to be 4 periods. Our rate is 4%, but it's 2 times per year, so it's 2% because we're going to take 4 and divide it by 2. And then we are going to calculate to find the total amount and the total interest. Now we actually have to do several calculations on this, but we can use every period we get charged 2% interest, and that's how we will calculate this. So we're going to calculate 4 times. So we begin with our principal of $1,350 times our interest rate. And when we multiply that, we get $27. Now we're going to add the $27 to our principal to get the amount to calculate with on our next calculation. So that's going to be $1,377. And then we'll take that times 2% again. And that gives us $27.54. We add it on again, $27.54, and that gives us the amount to calculate for our third calculation. So you see what's happening. Here's how much interest we earned in this 6 months. Semi-annual would be every 6 months. And then we add it back on to get a new principal balance. And our new one is $1404.54. We're going to take that times 2%. Which is 2809. So we add 2809 to our previous balance, and then we're going to have our fourth calculation, and that is at 1432.63, and we multiply by 0.02. And I'm going to pause this for a minute and finish this out and then talk about it. All right, so I went ahead and finished the calculations because we're almost to 15 minutes and I don't want to go past that. So when we end up here, notice we have 1461.28. That's the total amount in the account now. If we subtract our principal that we invested in the beginning, then our interest is 111.28, total interest for that compound interest. Okay, so we're finished with this section, and then we'll move on to another video for the next part.